I love working here.
Nice to see a big crowd out here tonight. So I did not get anything email-wise from anyone on the board.
We're still working on that.
Okay, very good. So that's going to be good head to come. So guys, last month I did not have great news stat-wise. However, they have gone down substantially as I anticipated they would from the last time I was here. So overall, in the month of February, we had 0 offenses of violence reported to us, a 100% decrease from where we were last time. Great. Auto thefts down 60%. Thefts were down 13% for the year. Theft from auto is down 80%. Property crime in general is down 43%. And our burglaries is the only thing where we have seen a bit of a spike. We had 8 at this point last year. We've had 13 so far this year. So that is something that we're going to continue to work on. We have made some progress. This past week, we made some good arrests at the Deacon, which is the large structure up on Straight Street, where it's a very large UC housing community. They had roughly 6 to 8 burglaries in a span of a few days up there, and we were able to make a couple of arrests from that. So we have one of our top investigators on the case. He's made some good headway, and I can't say for certain, but I would not be surprised if there's a link amongst the juveniles who are doing a lot of the burglaries that are around town. So not 100%, but we're making some good headway. We recovered some of the stolen property. Just as a word of advice to you guys, if you guys do have nicer, more expensive computer systems, your iPads, your iPhones, your kids' game consoles, if you guys can make a note to jot down the serial numbers and that kind of stuff, if by some circumstance your house was ever broken into, that is huge for our investigators to track down these guys who are doing it. When they try to pawn this stuff off, the pawn shops have to write down the serial numbers and the model numbers. It makes it much easier for us to try to track them down. That's how we've been able to crack a lot of these cases. So this, again, I'm not telling you guys your business, but it may not be a bad idea to jot down some of that information. Something else that's been very beneficial, a lot of folks, and I'm not someone who's advertising specifically for it, but a lot of people who have the Nest doorbell systems are very popular. The Ring doorbell systems are very popular. They're very neat and they're very helpful. It's helped us, again, crack a lot of crimes with people. So if you guys would consider getting one of those, it's a doorbell system where you can access it remotely from your work, on your cell phone, anywhere you're at. If someone rings your doorbell or approaches the front of your house, that's information you'll be able to see who comes up to your front door. I went to a friend's house just to drop something off, and specifically, he gave me a call on my phone when I was sitting on his front porch for about 10 seconds, wanted to know what I needed. And so it'd be a great benefit to you guys, but the little stuff, the little target hardening things, lighting systems, not leaving your windows open, securing your doors, not leaving things like in plain view of your house, not putting garbage cans next to windows. That little stuff is very important. That's going to help us a lot. So let's all work together to cut down these burglaries. We'll do our part. Call us up. We don't always get all the information. So if you guys see something or hear something in your neighborhood, don't be afraid to hesitate to call us. Any information can certainly help. It's not a guaranteed thing. I know a lot of folks, and especially in the Clifton Gaslight area, a lot, they use the Nextdoor app. It certainly is a resource. As police, we don't monitor it. It's a good way for you guys to exchange information. However, it's not the be-all, end-all. So use it as a reference or a guide, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the facts of someone's opinion of a circumstance that happened. So look at it, but if you guys want specific information, feel free to call the police department. You can ask me. I'm happy to talk to you about it. If we've had a burglary or some kind of auto theft in the area or something, I'm happy to answer questions about it. So use Nextdoor as a resource, but it's not necessarily all the factual information that you might need. And finally, just to kind of keep it on everybody's radar, National Night Out is going to be August the 4th this year. It's going to be in Mount Airy Forest, and we're trying to welcome and get all the communities of District 5 to come out there for it. In the past, I know a lot of folks feel like it's been monopolized by the College Hill area, but this time it's going to be right in the heart of Mount Airy Forest. So we have to see as many folks as possible. So scratch it on your calendars, and hopefully we'll see a lot of you guys up there. Captain, do you have any information that you'd like me to add about anything else tonight? Or?
Talking about PPOs.
I did not say anything about PPOs.
No, you've been lying to us and we put PPOs out.
Great. So what Captain was saying is that we've just been allocated, typically through grant money to the city, to have additional high visibility patrols in the area. So we will be utilizing that, not just in the business area, but some we'll be able to use on the side streets. Again, if we're getting information from people where we see that we're having a particular problem, we can start allocating resources to that to address it. So again, don't be afraid to be the person calling in, because it's if you're suspicious about something, it might be something real. So please don't hesitate.
I think I heard an acronym. What was the acronym you used?
Visibility overtime, sir. PVO.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right. That's all I have, guys. Yes, sir.
So if a burglary is committed in my neighborhood, I wouldn't necessarily know about it, but if I've got one of the cameras you're talking about, it might show something of interest to you folks.
Correct.
Particularly if somebody's going door to door looking for the opportunity, they're likely to show up on cameras. Is there any way that, how do we find out so we can help you, or how do you, I can't imagine detectives going door to door and checking walls.
We're not going door to door, but if you are aware of a burglary that happened, and you think you have useful information on an app where you've recorded some kind of digital recording or something, by all means, contact me or contact our investigator. We'd be happy to take a look at it. They're actually, the name of it escapes me. It's been out now for a year to 18 months, but you can actually, if you're willing to, and there's no compulsion to do it, but a lot of folks are joining up with a citywide app where if you have a camera system on your house or on your business, and you have information that you'd like to share with us, we'd love to have it.
Yeah, the problem is, I don't know if I have information to share unless I know something's happened in the neighborhood. And you're not positioned staff-wise to canvass the neighborhood for potential litigation like this. So right now, there's sort of a gap there, I guess, between.
Hey, Nick, real quick, just I think what might answer the question even better is, especially with the Ring doorbell system, I have one, and Ring offers a user group where you can share your video with all the other users for Ring doorbells that are in the neighborhood, and 9 times out of 10, that's going to get to the police some way, somehow. That video is, even if it's just peculiar, somebody walks up your doorstep, and, hey, this guy walked up my doorstep, and then he left, and then 3 houses down saying, oh yeah, we just got our house broken into. It all connects, and that information, like I said, 9 times out of 10 it gets to the police. So it's a good community tool, strength in numbers, and I use it. So.
Yes, sir.
You said you have for more security. You had the acronym I didn't get. But
PVO. It's simply police visibility over time.
this is about one of the most safest neighborhoods in the city.
Yes, it is.
So I would hate to see spending public safety resources on this neighborhood.
So I can appreciate that. However, we don't want people to think that we're not patrolling here either. So
I know you
yes, there will be more patrols in other neighborhoods that have more of a need for it, but we don't want to neglect, just because the neighborhood has good on stats doesn't mean we want to neglect visibility here either. So it's not like we're going to be throwing 25 police officers out here all walking around. That doesn't send a good message. But on occasion, there will be additional officers up and around the area. So it's not something that's going to cast a gloomy light on the gaslight area.
I'm just worried about the amount of money we're spending, where we're
Well,
spending.
the other thing, sir, is we deploy our officers where data tells us. So, with Clifton being the low level of crime, you may get, 2 officers on a Thursday night when we're seeing that increase of burglaries. Unlike some of the other communities, they might get officers every night. So
I got it.
you're getting the most bang for the buck, and believe me, being efficient but effective when looking at those numbers is the name of the game. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this to target traffic and safety as well?
That's at the discretion of the captain. Do you anticipate any of it being traffic related, or do you think it would be more high visibility?
We can address that if that gets brought to our attention.
Well, a number of residents have mentioned, it's been talked about a lot on next door, is McAlpin Avenue, especially in the morning hours, with 2 schools being there and people sitting up and down the street. So that's something I'm sure the neighbors would.
I think that's something we can address.
Sure. Yep, that won't be a problem. I can contact our traffic guys and have them up here, like the 7 to 9 areas somewhere around there. Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Drew. I go to the University of Cincinnati and I study digital media.
All right, next topic is a discussion regarding the proposed dog park on Denora Avenue. Before we get started, I just want to talk a little bit about how this got on the agenda and what we're envisioning. So obviously everyone has seen the discussions on Nextdoor. Last week, before we set our agenda, I heard that Parks had volunteered to have a representative come to our next meeting. I had also gotten a lot of requests from the community to put this on the agenda. So I thought that'd be a good opportunity to have a question and answer, a debate where we can talk about pro, con, and the process. I invited Mr. Dana Dubé, who's, from what I understand, kind of the leader of the pro dog park faction. Saturday afternoon, I think, after we had sent the agenda out to the community, I learned that Parks had rescinded their offer to have someone here, so to my knowledge, there's no Parks representative. I heard back from Mr. Dubé. He declined to come as well, but it's on the agenda. It's a topic of community import, and this is your community council, so of course we're happy to hear from anyone. I would encourage people to use this opportunity to ask questions, to try and learn some information, try and hear a different perspective, and as always, let's be respectful. So the first person who has submitted time is Ms. Pamela Mitchell.
Oh, well. Well, yeah, we have an actual presentation.
Yeah, that's a good point. I
think we want to do that first.
Yeah, well, that's what I was recognizing you for, is
okay.
the presentation. But before that, I think Brian made a good point. We have heard that their Parks, as a result of a meeting they had Friday, is going to be holding a formal community engagement session. I don't know that there's been a time set for that. Do you know?
No. Once again, to loudly and clearly, Parks is going to announce when they're ready that they're going to have a community engagement session. It will be advertised widely through the Parks networks as well as through CTM. Mark Jeffries and I will make sure that we will get this information to you. And they want everybody to understand that what happened on Friday was that the people who wanted a dog park made a presentation for their consideration. It was a request to consider it, and that's what's happening. So really all that needs to happen next is for people to sit tight and wait for an announcement from Parks. The Parks director will hold a community engagement session, just as I wrote about in the Chronicle that was just published, the Colored Chronicle, the first of its kind, which clearly laid out the three triangular parts of the Parks operational and directional system, which is community speaks, Parks director with her staff looks at and weighs in on what can be done next. Parks board of directors makes the final decision.
And as Rama said, we will do everything we can to publicize that information so everyone knows where to go and can make their voices heard. All right, the presentation.
Hi, my name is Maura McVeigh. I live in the area that surrounds Sonora Park, and I've been a Clifton resident for 3 years. This is my first time coming to this kind of engagement, so I'm really excited to be here, and I thank you for your time. And I will. You're going to see a lot more of me, I promise. One of the things that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, talk to the...
Oh, you record here, okay.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to make sure that we're talking about today, and I appreciate your time, is making sure, one, that we're exactly what you talked about just now, Rana, that we're helping to follow the process that's illustrated by the city and the Parks organization. So we'd like to request that CTM continues and engages in this conversation in a neutral way and has an active role. As the representatives of the Clifton organization, of the Clifton neighborhood, we come to you to help speak for us and to help have these discussions. So a few things that we wanted to talk about that have been demonstrated so far that we want to really move forward from in order to have a more effective dialogue is, one, the misrepresentation of public support and a lack of public engagement so far. There's a lack of long-term vision that's been shared so far in terms of planning what the proposed location looks like, while we're also keeping the city criteria for dog parks in mind. Currently there's a lack of planning for long-term funding as well as maintenance. So we've got questions about what's going to happen there. And the dismissal of some concerns from the community regarding health, safety, and environment for those particularly immediately surrounding the area that will be directly impacted. So I'm not going to read these slides to you. You guys can go through this. I'll make sure that you have the presentation as well. But there's just been some misrepresentation of the feelings of what's been presented so far and what we're hearing are the actual facts. So we started with a Nextdoor survey. As you talked about, there's been a lot of emotional conversation on Nextdoor. Part of the push that we'd like to ask this group to help us with is to really take a fact-based approach. Use the data, use decision criteria, be objective, and help us to have this be a more fact-oriented conversation. The public engagement is starting. We're glad to be a part of that. And we're looking forward to ongoing dialogue in this space to be able to have a discussion that hears and respects both sides. We're hearing conflicting messaging. So on one hand, we're hearing individuals who are pro having the dog park in Denor talking about it's only going to be Clifton residents. People are going to walk to this park. But we also need to have ample parking and all of these things for people who are driving there. It's only going to be Clifton residents who are attending, but we're engaging the Northside community councils, we're engaging others in Spring Grove, et cetera. So there's just some conflicting messaging. Highly likely that there's also many different parties who are sharing many different types of presentations or resources as a part of this. We want to have one constructive dialogue and make sure that, again, we're accurately, factually representing the facts for both sides. So in terms of long-term vision and planning, this is an aerial view of Denora Park. I don't know if everybody's familiar with where this is. It's on Ludlow, about a half a mile west of the downtown business district on Ludlow. And right now it's targeted for families with young children. There's about a 3 to 3.5 acre space, playground, small playground, with a small play structure, some swings. It's on a wood chip surface, and it has kind of some older logs perimeter. There's been an open field with a picnic table. We did have a lot of trees that were removed this winter. They have not been replanted. There's currently no running water or grilling area or any other kind of amenities for that kind of space. Like I said, it's about a half a mile west of the Clifton Business District. And then it's the access road to 3 streets that have no outlet. About 30 homes sit back behind the park, just to give you some context. Cincinnati Parks actually has criteria for dog parks. I've got 10 copies. I apologize, I didn't know how many people were on the council, but
we can share.
So I brought some copies for you. Again, I'm not going to
Can you give one? Can you put it on the dog cam so we can see it? We'll make sure. Is this going to work, Michael? We can't show full presentation in this.
Yeah, you've got the highlights up there. Right?
Yeah, I brought some highlights up here.
All right.
So one of the recommendations is that a dog park be a minimum of 2 acre site in order to provide adequate space for dogs to play. One of the pieces that John Osterman called out in this document, which was authored in January of 2020, was that dog parks are really popular and they bring people in from outside the neighborhood. And in fact, Mount Airy Park was expanded due to its popularity. Those that are familiar with Armlager Park, it's got rotating acreage so that there's no specific area that kind of gets overused, which allows for it to have a much better kind of aesthetic as well as quality. And then Washington Park and Westwood both include hard surfaces. Part of these criteria also include that due to noise and traffic concerns, sites should not be selected that are adjacent. I've got a typo in here. Sites should be selected that are not adjacent to residences. And then 4 to 6 feet fencing, running water for both dogs and people, appropriate trash cans, parking, shade, benches and tables for those that are there observing their dogs, an appropriate surface, and then an ongoing plan for maintenance is a really important part of this and one of the key concerns of the residents of the area. The City of Ann Arbor has comprehensive guidance. It's about a 30-page document. I've linked it here. Obviously didn't bring copies for everybody, but it's got fantastic criteria in terms of how they engage the community, as well as principles that they apply to having dog parks. I really encourage maybe some review of that, as well as the guidelines for Cincinnati, and we have that as a part of some of the basis of the discussion here. I wanted to share a couple of examples from other parks. So at Mount Airy Park, these pictures were taken last week. This is an example of what becomes a mud area, and it's literally called mud area when it rains. Thankfully this day it was a sunny day, so we've got dry space, but it's literally called a mud area. In addition, you've got overflowing trash in almost every single trash bin in that park, waste bags that are tied to the fencing, and then a lot of trash near picnic areas. This is a park that's maintained by parks, and this is the outcome. So it's just a risk that as neighbors of the proposed area, we're just taking a look at what some of these other parks look like, what's the entrance into the Clifton community from Northside, from other parts of the city, we're not sure this is the look that we're going for. From a planning for long-term funding standpoint, it's a minimum of $150,000 plus a yearly maintenance. It would require an endowment to make sure that that yearly maintenance takes place. It's right now not on Park Foundation or city priorities, and in fact the city turned down ideas for dog parks in Denor and Clifton, quite frankly, in 2016 and 2020, citing both budget concerns as well as space concerns. Building a new dog park in Denor Park over maintaining and improving our current parks demonstrates the priorities of Clifton in the city. You've got an aging playground structure that's designed basically for 3-year-olds and under in that space. If you put a brand new dog park there, you're really sending a message that says the dogs are more important. So in 2020, this is an example of one of the responses from the city as a part of the neighborhood project suggestion process. There were 7 requests specific to a dog park in Clifton, 3 of which were specific to Denor Park. Park staff indicates that due to the size, use, and topography of the site, it's an inappropriate location for a dog park, and so we kind of put a lot of stake into what those parks staff indicate there, given they're the experts on what the requirements would be. All 7 requests for a dog park in Clifton had similar responses. In 2016, there were 3 requests for a dog park in Clifton, including some for Denor. Similarly, Denor is a relatively small green space, and adding additional play equipment or a dog run is not advisable. There's no funds to create a dog park, as well as funding be available for maintenance of additional dog parks. So again, all of those requests in 2016 from the city had the same response. And then I also wanted to just share a sample of concerns from the neighbors who they have property that surrounds the Denor Park area. A few are listed here, obviously not comprehensive, but these need to be addressed. Some of them are, more in terms of safety, others more in terms of aesthetic and health and environment. But they are questions that residents have, and they need to be addressed as we go through this process. And I'd like to turn it over to a neighbor, Sean Baird, to share his personal discussion of this park.
Before we do that, does anyone have questions that they'd like to ask? Ronald.
So, what concerns your group about the fact that what the city has already got going as processes will not be enforced in the consideration of the dog park?
So I think up until the last 24 to 48 hours when we saw things happen on Friday, that was the first time that we'd actually seen kind of due process being followed. And the concern around that being on the agenda the way that it was versus as a part of new business, kind of normal procedures for things to be showing up on a city parks agenda the way that other issues normally do.
Okay, I'd like to, as the former chair of parks for 5 of the last 6 years, say that that is exactly the way the parks conducts business. As a group of people can go over and request. This is a new parks director. There have been 2 parks directors since Willie Carden. The second one was fired, Wade Walcott, and now we have a brand new one, Kara Kish. The parks people have told me to communicate this loudly and clearly to the community of Clifton, which is, what makes you guys think that they're not capable of doing this the right way? Why do you not have faith in the process of the city and the process of the parks? They're doing it openly and transparently, and I agree with them, and I'm absolutely astounded.
Let's remember to be respectful.
I'm being respectful. I'm not sure that I'm being disrespectful. I'm sorry.
Everyone, please.
If you want respect, then you have to be willing to give respect. Dana Dubé is not here today and asked me to say pointedly, the reason he didn't come was he did not want to be flayed publicly for an opinion he has the right to have, an opinion he shared with the Park Board of Commissioners, and an opinion that will be followed up on with community engagement. So I'm simply here to say, let's respect everybody and let's not do this on next door Clifton.
Agreed.
This is not next door.
Yeah, came from next door Clifton.
Hold on.
A key point of this is that we'd like to ensure that we're all following this process, not just one side or the other, that everyone is leveraging that process versus on next door other things. If we have a dog park in Clifton, we want it to be a shining star of the community. We don't want it to be an eyesore. We don't want it to be a nuisance to the neighborhood. So let's go through it the right way so that we come out with the right outcome.
Anyone else? Questions, not speeches, questions.
I have questions, but not for Morris or for CTM. If that's
Questions for,
okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
I thought your presentation was amazing.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Yes, I do have a question. When you had the slide about Mount Airy.
Yeah.
And the illustration that the area is called Mud Park?
Mud pit, yeah,
pit,
it's literally the middle of
trash.
our
So
park.
is it a mud pit because dogs are running through it, or is it just, are you trying to just point out neglect?
No, it was never intentionally created as a mud pit. It's just the most highly used area of the park. And because they don't have space to do rotating areas like Armulator Park does, it's a 3-acre park, I believe. It was 2 and now it's 3, I think. But it's just become a mud area, and they
Because of
haven't.
dogs.
Yeah, they haven't done anything more to maintain that space.
Gerald?
To answer your question, people have to realize that dogs are such that the compression they exercise on the ground due to very small contact with the ground and their weight is such that the compression is very high and grass cannot grow. That's basically why a grassy area becomes a mud pit. It's a technical piece of information.
Legitimate concern.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we have cards. Sean?
All right, we can go to the next.
Yeah, Sean.
Sean, you go first. Sean, you're up.
So I can't.
Let's try, we've got a time limit. Let's try and keep 2 or 3 minutes, please.
Yeah, sure. You know, I had originally I had basically a letter that I was going to read. You know, I mean, it's a kind of talks about how we all feel on the street about the park and you know, our concerns. But you know, I don't have enough time to read that, so let me just kind of see if I can you know, eloquate. You know, okay, so my neighbors and I were concerned that a dog run would basically ruin the park as we know it and love it. We fear that this historic green space would be spoiled by basically the large volume of people that would be drawn to this bustling dog park that is being talked about. The rise in traffic associated with the amount of pet owners driving in from the surrounding areas, we feel would greatly disrupt our only access street, Old Ludlow, which you guys saw up there on the, that's the access street to like 40 homes back there basically. And the influx of cars parking and leaving would then also greatly reduce the safety to our children and our neighbors who simply want to go out for a walk. It would also be a threat to pedestrians attempting to cross Ludlow and even to the dogs themselves if they got loose. The increase in traffic would also be dangerous to other motorists with a stream of cars exiting and entering the small street of Old Ludlow from the speedy bend of Ludlow Avenue itself. We also fear that the barking of dogs would be a constant annoyance to surrounding households, and we feel that the required space and changes to provide for the dogs would constitute the loss of an essential sanctuary for the neighbors and parkgoers alike and greatly diminish an important counterpart to the Jewish cemetery. So I'm not going to read any more of this, but basically the park that's been proposed, they're talking about, you know, it could cost up to $2 million. It's kind of based on what's happened in Westwood, where you have it's in a city center. There's running water. You know, there's access. There's businesses around. They want to create the same thing down on that little park, where you're going to be getting people coming in from everywhere, north side, over there by the university. You know, Avondale, everywhere, and we just have this little street that's going to be all of a sudden a bustling community center, and we have a lot of concerns. How is it going to be paid for, and how is it going to be maintained? How is it not going to turn into a dump, basically, without thousands of dollars a year? So that's our main point. I'm sorry, I hate to follow more as such a presenter, but you know, we have a lot to say, and you know, maybe we'll submit some, you know, like an official letter to you sometime. But thank you.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, you put a lot of work into this letter, obviously. Would you please send that to us?
Yeah, I would. When I was sitting back here, I was just like, I about went white because I was like, I should have just printed, 20 copies and I could have just handed it out. So I definitely will submit it because, it is kind of like it's not really a manifesto, it's just a summation about how we all feel. We really, we're so connected to the park. It's our home. It's a gateway to our homes. I mean, we are, the park directly affects us. It's not just like, oh, this bustling thing is going to come and it's going to be great for, like downtown and, urban renewal and people are going to come. That's really going to disrupt our lives in a lot of ways, we feel. So that's why we're also passionate about it, and that's why we're here. And you're going to hear a lot of valid points. And we all just want to make sure, like we said, that we're respectful and, especially people like myself, this is the first time I've ever been involved in any kind of civic process. So, we're gonna do it the right way, and we're gonna be here, and you'll all be hearing from us. So thank you.
Thank you for coming. I hope you continue to come on other issues.
Yeah.
Laura, you raised your question. Let's do you now.
Do you want me to stand?
You can do whatever you'd like.
Hi everybody, I'm Laura. I live on Denore. I just had a few questions about process, and I'm happy to waive most of them because they might, reinvigorate some contentious debate. Anyway, I just wanted to know, going forward, what is reasonable to expect from CTM as part of this process? I don't want any of us to, pester CTM in a role that CTM does not have, but I think from us, we're confused about how some of the dog supporters have gotten in front of local groups without our attention and without us knowing about it. We'd obviously like to avoid that going forward, and I also think we want to make sure that we're going through the appropriate avenues on our side too. So, what should we expect from CTM going forward?
So I think our role in this, as we tried to set up tonight, would be to provide a forum for people to express their opinions, to learn about the project, pro, con, and process. Unfortunately, that did not work out tonight. This is the first time we have had this on our agenda. I understand that the pro side has approached CDA and a couple other organizations. I think our role is to advocate for parks to have an open and inclusive process, which I think they're going to. They're announced they're gonna have an engagement session. No vote was taken on Friday, no decisions have been made. We're gonna publicize that, as I said, as broadly as we can so that everyone is going to be able to come and voice their opinion. I don't imagine that CTM is going to advocate for one side or the other because everyone is a Clifton resident. We represent everyone's interests. We're not the decision maker. We're not going to have a vote. Parks, I think Parks is the one who's going to be making the decision. And our role, we make decisions on other things, just this isn't one of them. So I think what our goal is to make sure that everyone who has an interest can speak to the decision maker, which is Parks. Does that answer your
Something out.
We'll do Peter then on.
Stances on other issues of which we have no control. We can't say we object to this or support this knowing we're not a decision maker. And we don't operate by majority rule. All right? We don't really go to every resident and say we can't decide until you all vote. So it seems to be a possibility. I don't know how.
I'm not foreclosing it. It's not going to happen tonight.
That's
for sure.
That's for sure. We could take a stance or not take a stance.
Yeah, Ron.
Just to be clear, I think this is all blown way out of proportion. And you guys absolutely have to understand there was never going to be a vote. The Park Board of Commissioners was informed by the Director of Parks, by the citizens who approached the Director of Parks at the Park Board meeting. It was as simple as that. This has been blown way out of proportion. The discussions are going to be had about how much money needs to be raised, how much by the community. There is money, Parks has money to put a dog park in wherever it wants. Hierarchy is going to make that funding available. So everybody just needs to literally just wait. You can make your case. Those who want the dog park will make their case. You make the case as well. And just remember, there will be winners and there will be losers. And we can't be the ones to referee that one.
Can we make sure the meeting is actually after working hours so that people can actually
We,
attend?
we can't control Parks' schedule.
We can't influence that because a lot of our organization was not able to attend because it was at 9 o'clock on a Friday.
We can,
That's the
we can
standing park
ask.
board meeting.
It wasn't a standing park board meeting, it was a specially scheduled session.
No, that's only because they didn't do it on the 28th of February, they moved it to the 29th, but they have a special session, they do it at their convenience. There's a public engagement on March the 11th. It's going to be held at International Friendship Park, about a whole bunch of other issues. They do it at their convenience. We either show up or we don't.
we will, I think that is something that our role would be to make it so that people can attend. So I think that is something we can advocate for.
But the park board community engagement sessions are not held at the same time as the park board meeting. They are public and will take place in the evening, 5:30 till 7 or 5:30 till 6:30 till 8.
So people can actually attend.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Hudson.
Sorry, I have a follow-up question, just to clarify confusion. I'm understanding that there's going to be a community engagement session about Burnett Woods coming up soon on March 11th, is that correct?
That's one of 3 agenda items.
Yeah.
So is the Nor Park on, I think there's been confusion.
No,
Okay, that's
no,
what we
and no.
have.
That
Okay.
is Camping and Education Foundation's plans for the trail side
Okay.
improvement, and that is one of the agenda items. I sent it to you to post or tomorrow to post.
I don't think the Denora engagement session has been scheduled yet. And when it is, we'll send it out.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Mitchell?
No,
Well, hello everyone.
no, I said no.
Thank you all for coming. I guess part of this whole thing is, well, there's a process that we are going to follow, should be following.
Can we have one conversation?
Yeah.
But I think that what has happened that made everybody get so overwrought was just the things on next door Clifton, right? And people got really, it seemed as though on that forum, which obviously is it's just like any other social media, right? It can be overblown and misinterpreted, but it seemed as though this was being steamrolled through without bringing those of us who live right, that's how it seemed on next door.
Oh, no.
Right?
So don't invalidate our feelings.
No, I'm not invalidating your feelings. I'm just going
Let's let Ms. Mitchell present. We don't need to keep
So anyway,
engaging on
that's
every
the
little point.
background of why, like most of the people that live on our street or here tonight, or near it, is that we felt that something was happening without us knowing about it, that's all. And so the only other thing, a couple things I could add. One is that, I think Sean was trying to say was that we have many small children that live really close to that park, and the children come and play on the swings or in the open area, and little kids and dogs don't always mix so well together. So, we have people on our street, like Sean, for instance, has 3 small children that have come to our park since they were tiny babies. So, this is something we want to preserve. I think her presentation said preserve Denora Park. Preserve what it is now, which is a family neighborhood place for people with kids and just people to come down, take a walk, whatever. The other thing I would say is we would be so in favor of enhancing Denora Park by improving the playground equipment, planting some of the trees that died and were taken down. So it's not like we don't want to change anything, but we certainly want to have a say in what does happen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All I want to say, if I may, on behalf of Mark Jeffries, who's the chair of the Parks Committee now, and myself, because I'm representing him today, he's in New York and was unable to come here, is please don't arbitrate this on next door Clifton. We have a Parks Committee, we have a Parks Committee chair, we have been working with parks. We would like very much for you to come here and talk to us or email our president so we can answer your questions and not let next door be the source of your.
That's why we're here.
That's what we're doing right now.
Thank you.
All right, Sean.
The presentation was great, and I agree. I have 2 dogs and a cat, a couple of kids, a wife, and I live in Clifton. I live on Evanswood, and I really feel like this process started off wrong, like really wrong. It was, it seemed wrong. Like the community engagement was like dog park and Denora Park, yes or no, and that was it. I think the whole process needs to stop. I think it needs to take a bigger view, especially if you start to consider Northside, Spring Grove Village, other places, and find and survey people. Actually survey not just people on next door with dogs, because if you ask kids if they want free ice cream, they're probably going to say yes. So I think you need to go bigger and find out what people really want. We did a big survey for arts and culture, and we were really surprised by the outcome of that, and that drives our mission. So I think you really need to take a bigger picture, because maybe there is another location that could include more of the neighborhoods with more parking, and just include other neighborhoods in the whole process and find out what they really want. And personally, I would not live next to a dog park. I just think it's a bad idea. So these people chose to live where they are because of the peace and serenity, and to put a dog park in there is sort of violating their right to home ownership and enjoying their property.
Yes, so I'm gonna pass my time. I do have some handouts that I can share later, but all the points have been covered, so to save time.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Margot Fosna.
Hi. So first I have a question that I realized, so when we said that the Parks Board has announced that they're going to announce an engagement, I guess I missed where that happened. Were there meeting minutes that came out after the meeting?
I saw a summary that was emailed to me from Mark or Ramos of the meeting that was held Friday morning.
Okay, I attended that meeting, and from my perspective, and maybe I'm misunderstood, but that Kevin Flynn specifically said that Clifton Community Fund was to do the engagement, and they were to then make the recommendation to the park board.
Well, this is not Clifton Community Fund.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying process, I'm so confused.
I have not heard, that.
That was what, I mean, those words definitely came out, maybe something else happened after that I missed, but that part definitely happened, so I'm just not sure, like, what is Clifton Community Fund's role in this, because I know they're gonna also be looking at this. I don't know if they have the ability to hold a large forum or not, so that's just a question that I have.
So, Rama, you were at the meeting.
Yes, so now Mary Jo Vesper was there because the Clifton Community Fund is about to vote. They are the Clifton Parks Advisory Council for Denora, Bowdle, and Mount Storm. And they are going to vote on whether or not they think that's a good place for a dog park. That is one advisory council out of many advisory councils. And Kevin Flynn's opinion was that that should also be considered. Please do it, do that homework, and be a voice for your community if you want it to be. But that is not a binding, or that was his opinion. It was communicated, and that was the end of that. The parks director is the one who is going to take this up and make a recommendation to the park board. Taking everybody's opinion, and remember, this is a park for everybody. Therefore, there will be everybody at the community engagement session. That's what I'm trying to prepare everybody for.
So let me read out the email that Rocky Mers, who's a parks official, sent after the Friday meeting. At this morning's Board of Park Commissioners, members of the community members representing several organizations in and around Clifton presented the idea for a dog park at Denora Park. Both sides, for and against, were well represented and spoke at the meeting. At the conclusion of the public comments and discussion, the Park Board of Commissioners asked Park Board staff to host a community engagement process in order to develop a staff recommendation taking into account all aspects of the project, including public feedback. Interested parties will be notified of the Park Board's engagement opportunities and meetings once they have been scheduled. So it sounds like CCF is just advisory. Parks itself will be running a community engagement session, and we will publicize that.
Okay, so anything CCF says or doesn't say doesn't really hold any.
I mean, it has the weight that Parks.
I'm just trying to understand, like, who matters. And
it'll have the weight that Parks gives it. CCF is a private organization. They're not a community council, so they are not required to have a public meeting or anything like that. I think you can go on their website and see who their board of trustees is.
Yeah, we've talked to that. I mean,
So,
that's,
yeah.
I just didn't understand what the role was there. I was misunderstanding.
It sounds like it's advisory only. And do you have another question?
I just did have a few things I wanted to say, but now I can't quite really remember them. What we talked about that. I wanted to clarify a little bit about why we felt like things were further along in the process than they were. When things came out on Nextdoor, obviously Nextdoor is not a great way to find out about anything. But then when there was a public meeting at the park that was billed as like the Clifton is coming to give this presentation, that feels very sponsored by Clifton. And then when the presentation documents for the park board meeting were available through public records requests, I assume is how they were received by our street. There were statements like, Clifton dog owners agree, blah, blah, blah. And there were endorsements by people who may or may not have actually endorsed it in the way that it's being portrayed as a project. So that's why we felt the way we did, and why we're on kind of the offensive tonight. We would rather not be that way. We wish they would have been here so that they could adequately state how they were thinking at the time. Maybe that wasn't their intent, but it's hard to kind of understand.
All right, we're over time.
May I say something really? This will help everybody. They did come. Molly on your street came and looked directly
on our street.
Okay, whoever. Molly put together the presentation with the logo, did so because she and her husband work in this area. They made it look professional because they were going in front of the Park Board of Commissioners. They looked at the people from your street that were there and said, we're sorry that you got the idea that the Park Board is doing this. We did it. We wanted to look polished and professional. We had spare time, we did it. And that's really what it all came down to. So whatever miscommunication there was could have been resolved by everybody sitting down and talking, and we're doing that right now, and we hope we can continue to clear out the air.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We're going to move on to other agenda items.
Make a request. Those of you who came to this issue, would you stand up so we can just see who you are?
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Yep.
Thank you very much for coming.
Come for other things. Come every month.
Please come for other things. At the end of our agenda, hold on, excuse me. At the end of our agenda, we are going to have another section for community questions, assuming we do not run out of time as we frequently do. If you still feel like you have something you want to say, we will recognize you then, but we do need to move on to other items. Next up.
Hi, I'm Thomas. I'm a cashier at Clifton Market, and I'm also a student at UC studying neuropsychology.